Hey there, welcome back. Difficult Conversations, a course for student leaders. We're talking about how to engage in difficult conversations and how you, as a student leader, can use sort of a three-step process and some of the tips and tricks that we're going to be talking about to have more engaging and more successful conversations with people either within your organization or just your peers. So, what we're talking about here today in topic number 3 is moving past avoidance, right? And so we're going to talk a bit about the signs of avoidance and then some key questions that you need to consider in terms of moving past, right? So if we look at this on the continuum of things, we just talked about gaining clarity in terms of our 3 steps for more successful conversations. We just talked about gaining clarity. Now we're moving into, or we're getting to moving past avoidance and eventually focusing on actually engaging in that conversation. So some things to think about when you're preparing to engage in a conversation. How do you get yourself past that feeling of avoidance or that you're avoiding the conflict? So what you need to ask yourself is, will having this conversation help them? Will it help our organization? Will it help me? And you need to find a balance of those things. So ideally, it will be a balance of all 3 of those things. But really, if what you're focusing in is on helping the other person, then you're actually engaging in a conversation, or you're starting a conversation from a really good spot. So that's sort of would be, I think, a little bit more challenging if you were taking this conversation on with the notion that it was only truly going to benefit you, right? Are my feelings about what may happen making me avoid the conversation? So am I thinking so far ahead, or am I making an assumption as to how the person is going to react that I'm actually not even going to entertain the conversation because of what may happen versus what possibly could happen, right? So I'm making an assumption, and that assumption may actually be detrimental to the conversation itself. Should it occur, it may also force me to avoid the conversation because I'm really actually more concerned about the my assumed outcome versus the actual conversation itself. And then, is delivering this message consistent with how I wish to be viewed as a leader? And that's a very important question that you need to ask yourself. So part of the characteristics of a good leader is someone who is consistent with their values, right? The notion that they remain consistent in their decision making and their values. If you choose not to address something, you choose to avoid it, but it's inconsistent with your values and your organization's values, then that inconsistency is going to cause people around you to really truly question the value of your leadership and the value that you put on the organization. So some signs of avoidance. I think most of these are pretty self-explanatory, but I'll try and give some examples to help clear them up. So procrastination without reason, and what we're getting at here is something as silly as I can't do it, it's a Tuesday, right? Or I can't do it today, and coming up with a reason to do it or not to do it, right? Ignoring or delaying. So often this is something that many people will do, which is I'll get to it later when it's time for the interim report. And when we're usually seeing this, even within professional staff, is when we're talking about performance, right? So I won't address the performance in the moment. I'll wait until a more formal opportunity to address the poor performance. Sidestepping the issue, so somebody else will tell them, is a good example of that. Allowing short-term reactions to overrule long-term thinking. So where this can come into play is if you have somebody who has a hard time showing up on schedule, right? So short-term action being, oh, they showed up on time, or they came in on time today, and that overrules the fact that for the past 3 weeks they've only come on time twice, right? So almost saying, okay, well, maybe they've turned a corner, right? And allowing that to just sort of continue to perpetuate over a period of time. Blaming others is another a good one. So I can't believe that they don't know that they're screwing up. So who you're actually blaming is them. Like, I can't believe they're so self-absorbed, that they're not able to see the impact that they're having on other people or they're having on the organization. And then the last one there, not wanting to rock the boat. So sometimes that is a feeling that comes in when you're thinking about a conflict and you're questioning whether or not to take it on. Is, well, things are going really well within our organization. This is the one thing that's challenging. Do I really need to address this? Right? What will the impact be? And you have to ask those questions. You really do, in order to truly know. So some other things to consider, some other questions to consider. I think it's important to ask, as we've talked about, who am I helping? So how will I be helping them? Will telling them this thing make them better in the long run? So am I actually helping them, right? I think it's also important to think about why you're delaying it. So will delaying telling them about this problem make it go away? So if I don't say anything, is this something that will subside over time and is actually engaging in the conversation possibly more detrimental to the outcome? If I was in their position, would I prefer to know how I was doing or not? So would I prefer somebody to give me that feedback or not? And that's always a good way to gauge, right? How will they react? Am I presuming that I know what the reaction will be? Is it possible that they will appreciate me telling them? Right, so this gets back to maybe the question right before it, but certainly addresses that notion of am I making an assumption as to how they're going to react, and that's actually stopping me or preventing me from having the conversation in the first place. Is this something that I want to help them with? So is this something I want to take on, or is it something that somebody else can help them with, and I can point them in the right direction? Right? Will they accept advice from me? They won't. Right? So maybe I'm not the person that can have this conversation, or I'm not the person that can help solve the problem, but I'm the person who can start the conversation. How will telling them make me feel? And so the importance of this is to know that you have the support system in place so that you feel comfortable having the conversation, and that you feel that you're in a place that you can be successful in engaging in the conversation. And then the last point, are there other I need to consider before going ahead, right? And in our previous session, or the very first topic, we talked about sort of what's the collateral damage, for lack of a better word. Are there others who are going to be impacted by this that are not going to be directly involved in the conversation? And do I need to give them a heads up, or do I need to at least consider them when I'm thinking about going ahead? So that's how to move past avoidance. You need to ask yourself those questions, and you need to come up with a sort of a balanced answer to many of them. And if some of those questions they're quite rhetorical in nature, in essence, but if you're really answering yes to a lot of the questions of am I avoiding this because it makes me feel bad, or am I avoiding this because I'm making an assumption as to how they're going to react? If you're answering yes to a lot of those, then I think you need to consider moving into the next phase, which is the doing it phase, right? So that's our next topic, 3, doing it, actually engaging in the conversation. So we'll move on to that. Remember that there's a quiz at the end of each topic, and we'll see you at topic number 4, which is doing it.